Ah, Smart Water, now in a sleek can.
This feels cool, literally.
Perfect for social gatherings and on the go.
Should I start wearing turtlenecks?
One sip at a time, friend. Smart Water cans, for those with a taste for taste. Get yours today.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks. After 50 years in the corroded rectum of American politics, I guess I've seen it all. I've done it. I've written about it. I've analyzed it. I've talked about it. But lately I've been thinking about the meaning of life. Listen to Richard Nixon on this subject.
The unhappiest people of the world are those in the watering places, the international watering places like the south coast of France and Newport and Palm Springs and Palm Beach, going to parties every night, playing golf every afternoon, then bridge, drinking too much, talking too much, thinking too little, retired, no purpose. And so, while I know there are those who totally would disagree with this and say, gee, boy, if I could just be a millionaire, that would be the most wonderful thing. If I could just not have to work every day, if I could just be out fishing or hunting or playing golf or traveling, that'd be the most wonderful life in the world. They don't know life. Because what makes life mean something is purpose, a goal, the battle, the struggle, even if you don't win it.
So after my near-death experience of being framed in the Russian collusion hoax, a frame job engineered by Andrew Weissman, perhaps the single most corrupt federal prosecutor in American history, a frame job that was proven when the BuzzFeed sued the Department of Justice, and after 3 long years of a legal fight, they finally released the long-redacted, long-hidden final report of Robert Mueller, and even which he could not sugarcoat, that he found no evidence of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other crime on my part, a tidbit withheld from my defense attorneys by the judge at trial. Well, after my commutation of my sentence and my full and unconditional pardon, which is still not widely reported in the media, my children, my grandchildren said, Dad, Grandpa, maybe it's time to hang it up. Maybe it's time to, retire to the beach and just write historical books. And I was reminded of this quote from Theodore Roosevelt. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. That is why I continue to be in the arena, writing, talking about the events of the day and how I believe Donald Trump is going to lead us into a golden age of peace, prosperity, security, and justice. By the way, happy birthday to Barron Trump, who I calculated will be elected president in the year 2044. I think he is the Trump offspring with the stature and the interest to be president. I have a high regard for Don. He's a very effective advocate of his father and his policies. Like Eric is a terrific businessman. I think that Tiffany is a brilliant attorney. She's the other Trump child that I think I could see going into politics. And of course, Ivanka is a grand lady who's done great public works in the area of criminal justice reform. But Barron Trump is the one to keep an eye on. I believe he is the one who figured out the strategy of taking his father's message to alternative media, podcast media, opening millions and millions of new people to the Trump America First message, and correcting a lot of the disinformation about Donald Trump and what he stood for, Donald Trump and his actual record. I also saw that Bill Maher is going to visit the White House to visit with President Donald Trump, of whom he has been a harsh and biting critic. I guess Kid Rock set this up. I've appeared on Bill Maher's show. In fact, I did his pilot show for Politically Incorrect, taped it in New York as a favor to Frank Gannon, who was a speechwriter for President Nixon, later a television producer. And Bill Maher, I've done his current show 3 times, I think. It's funny. They treat you like a king. You show up at I guess it's the old CBS lot in Burbank, and they take you to a dressing room that has your name and a star on the door. And then you have a page who's assigned to you, a lovely young lady who's kind of takes you to makeup and brings you back to your dressing room. And then his producer shows up, a very nice guy, extremely well dressed, and he says, "Now on today's show, just one thing." Yeah, I said, "What is it?" He said, "Whatever you do, don't try to be funnier than Bill." I said, "Pardon me?" He said, "Don't try to be funnier with Bill." I said, "Well, but Bill has a platoon of comedy writers writing for him, and I live by my wits. It wouldn't be very hard to be funnier than Bill." His face kind of turned ashen. He says, no, don't get into that, because then he would have to top you. And I said, yeah, but then I would have to top him. I'm not even a professional comedian. Bill Maher's an interesting fellow. Last time I did his show, he literally accused me of being a Russian traitor, a traitor to my country, which is proven obviously to be false. But he won't invite me back to clear my name, won't admit. He publicly admitted there was no Russian collusion, but he won't invite me back to kind of straighten this out. So I've lost a lot of respect for him. I also don't think he's that fast on his feet. I mean, if I had a platoon of comedy writers, I guess I'd be pretty funny too. The attack on Tesla is really consuming an enormous amount of news. The violence of the hard left is really quite extraordinary. Left-wing domestic terrorists are continuing these attacks on Tesla. Las Vegas, just last Tuesday, a Tesla service center was targeted when a left-wing terrorist used Molotov cocktails to set several Tesla vehicles on fire. He fired at least 3 rounds from a firearm at the vehicles and spray-painted the word "resist" on the side of the dealership. This incident is not to be confused with the arrest of another guy, Daniel Clark Pounder, I read about last week, who also threw 5 Molotov cocktails at a Tesla charging station in South Carolina, one of which actually set him on fire. This is really out of control. We're going to talk about it when we get back. We're also going to talk about the JFK assassination documents released and what seems to be missing, which is quite a bit. If you're interested in politics, well, you're in the right place. This is The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks. And whatever you do, I would strongly urge you not to touch that dial, because we'll be right back with the JFK assassination document story and far more.
This is The Roger Stone Show.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit temptationstreats.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. This is the Roger Stone Show. We're talking about the unprecedented attack on Tesla, attacks on their dealerships, attacks on their charging stations, attacks on individual drivers and their cars. On Monday, another left-wing terrorist set 2 Tesla Cybertrucks on fire at a dealership in Kansas City. A Colorado Tesla dealership was also attacked with Molotov cocktails, while the words Nazi cars were spray-painted on the front of the building. And in Tigard, Oregon, a Tesla dealership was attacked with gunfire for a second time, with over a dozen shots fired. These are just the latest in a series of left-wing domestic terror attacks on Tesla dealerships, charging stations, and vehicles. This is all because Tesla founder and CEO has obviously stepped into the fore. Elon Musk is leading an unprecedented effort to uncover not millions, not billions, but trillions of waste, fraud, and corruption deep within our political system. And those he is exposing are unhappy. Democrats like Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett are actually applauding this carnage. Listen to her.
So I'll make sure that I keep it short, but I am truly here for very selfish reasons. Starting with on March 29th, it's my birthday. And all I want to see happen on my birthday is for Elon to be taken down. Yes.
So she is cheering on the arson, the shootings, the vandalism, the bombings of Tesla dealerships. It's really unbelievable. Then on Tuesday, Minnesota governor and failed vice presidential candidate Tim Walz said amidst the news of the attack on Tesla that he enjoyed watching the Tesla stock drop on his iPhone. He seems to miss sight of the fact that Minnesota's state pension fund holds almost 2 million shares of Tesla stock, totaling a whopping $361.5 million in state employees' pension assets. There's about another million shares, roughly 158 million in the non-retirement fund. So Walz is actually cheering on the downturn of the value of public pension funds for state employees and the retirees that he's responsible for. I had to laugh. I watched entrepreneur Kevin O'Leary make one of his famous appearances on Shark Tank. He slammed Tim Walz's absurd comments about Tesla stock, said that poor guy didn't check his portfolio in his own pension plan for the state. It's beyond stupid what he did. He's talking down a 3.5% weigh in on his own pension plan. I mean, what's the matter with that guy? He doesn't check the well-beings of his own constituents. That's their investment fund. He's a bozo. I think he called it exactly right. While Walsh was applauding domestic terrorism and the resulting hit to the portfolio of his own pensioners, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced she would pursue serious charges for the wave of domestic terrorism against Tesla properties. It was the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem who pointed out that Homeland Security does have a way to trace these anonymous phone calls and that there is a serious investigation going on by the FBI, Homeland Security, and the Attorney General. In the end, the people hurt most by this left-wing domestic terrorism are likely to be the leftists themselves when they land in a federal prison. And meanwhile, in what I call judges gone wild, you have a series of federal judges who seek to usurp the executive authority of the president. The most famous of these, of course, is Judge Boasberg in D.C., who has ruled that the president cannot deport an illegal immigrant, even if they have a criminal record and are a known terrorist. You also have another federal judge who has ruled that the president cannot fire executive branch employees at will. You have yet a third one who challenges the president's authority to ban transgenders in the military. This is judicial revolt. But with respect to federal judges, all my Republican and conservative friends who are saying impeachment need to understand how difficult it is to impeach a federal judge. Under Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, the House of Representatives, where we have a slim majority, can indict, that would be impeach, a judge, but the Senate then has to hold a trial to determine whether removal is appropriate. The House can impeach a judge with a simple majority vote. However, a judge may only actually be removed from federal office following a trial and a vote to convict by a 2/3 majority of the Senate. That is one of the reasons the blatantly unconstitutional attacks on Donald Trump and his policies are so troublesome to deal with. There's very little recourse available to remove lawless judges. Last week, a federal judge in Maryland issued an unconstitutional order to block DOJ from assessing Social Security records. Other than left-wing federal judges have attempted to interfere with the Trump administration performing just basic functions like cutting waste and fraud, firing useless bureaucrats, and even deporting criminal illegal aliens, as I said. On Truth Social, President Trump said unlawful national injunctions by radical left judge could very well lead to the destruction of our country. These people are lunatics, he said, who do not care even a little bit about the repercussions of their very dangerous and incorrect decisions and rulings. Lawyers endlessly search the United States for these judges and jurisdictions and file lawsuits as quickly as they can find them. It is then the obligation of law-abiding agencies of government to have these orders overturned. The danger is unparalleled. The judges want to assume the powers of the presidency without having ever been elected with 80 million votes. They want all the advantages with none of the risks. Again, a president has to be allowed to act quickly and decisively about such matters as returning murderers, drug lords, rapists, and other such type criminals back to their homeland and to other locations to make our country safe again. And such a high aspiration can never be done if radical and highly partisan judges are allowed to stand in the way. I would suggest that any executive order by the president would require the ruling of a 3-judge appeals panel before it could be stopped. There is a reasonable reform that I think everyone could agree to. Otherwise, you have unelected judges standing in the way of what the American people voted for in the most recent election.
This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code SPOTIFY. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify, code SPOTIFY.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
As someone who has written a book about the Kennedy assassination, which became a New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, and as someone who urged President Donald Trump in 2017 to release all of the classified documents in the possession of the federal government pertaining to the Kennedy assassination, I obviously greeted his announcement that he would keep his campaign pledge and make all of that information public with great fanfare. I was very pleased, but now having seen a number of the documents that have been released, and with the knowledge that 3,500 records are yet to be released from the official JFK assassination document collection, I, along with others, beginning to wonder whether we're seeing everything. Several weeks ago, I participated in a great Zoom call with a number of JFK researchers, all of whom I have high respect for, but one particularly, Larry Schnapf, stood out as someone who had really thought through how to collect and ensure that we had all the documents. He showed me a very thoughtful letter signed by my friend Congressman Tim Burchett and others to the president, essentially urging him to broaden out his order to ensure that we saw everything. Larry Schnapf is an attorney in New York. He has sued the Biden administration and the National Archives several times. He is commanding knowledge of the documents and the Kennedy assassination, as well as some keen observations about the assassinations of Senator Robert Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King. Larry, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you. It's quite a privilege to be on your show. And again, I can't underestimate enough to your listeners the important role that you have played to get us to this historic moment where we're at. I mean, without your help, we would not be right here. And the reason I'm coming on also is we need your help to get us across the finish line. We're at third base right now. And I want to commend President Trump for, listening to you and getting us to where we are. We're not quite sure exactly how many records. One of the frustrating things is we're not really quite sure how many records there are in the collection because we get different numbers. The archives has mentioned 3,500, also 3,648. The transparency plans that were approved by President Biden, those are the plans that the CIA and the FBI, their wish list for when they would review records in the future for possible disclosure, they have 4,455. But what we know is that there are 319,000 entries in the collection. That's NARA's number on the website, but that's not complete. There's 1,000 records that we know were supposedly released in 2017 to 2023, which are not in that number. And the central directory of the records that NARA has does not include records from the National Security Agency, that's Series 144, National Security Council, Series 145, the Secret Service, Series 154, and the Army Investigative Records Repository, Series 194. So we know that the collection as it exists right now, the JFK collection, I'm going to call that the collection, even if all of those records were released, we are not at mission accomplished, because we know there are records that are outside of the collection, that are not in the collection, that, and I'll go into more detail in a moment about what those records are. But I was wondering, I would like to take 5 minutes to let your listeners know how we got to where we are. And this started with the Warren Commission. Earl Warren, when the Warren Commission materials were turned over to the General Services Administration, which at that point, that's the predecessor to the National Archives, they were given an instruction that the only things that could be available were the report and the exhibits. Everything else was supposed to be subject to the then existing presidential executive order about national security grounds. And the issue is that, as we learned in 1975, I'll tell you in a minute, the Warren Commission was never given the authority to classify records. Unlike the Rockefeller Commission, when President Ford created the Rockefeller Commission, he expressly said in his executive order that they have the power to classify records. The Warren Commission was never given that ability to classify records. So from the get-go, they violated their charter and also the law by classifying records. And then when a mayor from Cedar Rapids, Mayor Johnson, found out that at that point in time, in those days, records would be hidden for 75 years. He was flabbergasted in 1965 that 75 years would apply to the Kennedy records. So the Department of Justice came up with some guidelines in the mid-'60s for releasing records, but nothing was done during that period of time. And then in 1972, President Nixon shortened the period of time, and he did a new executive order, shortening it from 75 to 30. Well, Bella Abzug had a committee hearing in 1975 November about how the FOIA law was not helping release the records in the Kennedy assassination. One of her speakers was David Bellin, and he admitted that the Warren Commission did not have the authority to classify records. And in fact, he said, none of us had classification security, so that we could not be looking at secured records to begin with. So what happened then also was then the House Select Assassinations Committee has their study, and the House had rules that their unpublished information would be classified for 30 years. So we have all these records that are being withheld, and then the Oliver Stone movie comes out, and at the end of the movie, he talks about these millions of records that have been withheld. And so the Congress passes the JFK Records Act to basically do two things. One is to order the agencies to scour their records for JFK assassination records, because they were spread throughout the government. And then they were supposed to be turned over to the National Archives and disclosed unless the agencies requested postponement. At that point in time, the Record Review Board was supposed to review these postponements. And if the agencies objected to a decision to disclose, they could appeal to the president. And the Record Review Board operated from 95 to 98. And at the end of 98, they went out of business, not because the job was done, but because Congress stopped funding them. And when they went out of business in 98, they had outstanding search requests to the CIA. They were trying to get records from the Robert Kennedy Family Trust. They had held records that Bobby Kennedy took an hour after the assassination, took records from the Oval Office and kept them. And we don't know what those records say. They were trying to get those records. There was records from Walter Sheridan, Bobby's right-hand man, who did his own investigation for Bobby. The ARB asked for those records, and because he also did some work for NBC, he took those records and transferred them to NBC, and NBC refused to turn them over. So after the Records Review Board goes out of business, the records that were postponed were supposed to be scheduled for disclosure in 2017, October 26th. President Trump announces on the 24th he's going to release the records. And then at the last minute, they get postponed. So I filed a lawsuit against the National Archives to get all the underlying correspondence. And what I found out was the National Archives actually issued memos to the CIA and the FBI saying that their grounds for postponement did not comply with the law and did not comply with the interpretations of the review board. They got overruled by the National Security Council, and the records were postponed twice. And then President Biden, again, did the same thing. They didn't use the criteria under the statute. and they came up with these transparency plans that would, again, not necessarily automatically release the documents, but provide for periods in the future when they could be reviewed. Now, when Congress passed the JFK Act, at that point in time, the records would have been released in 2029. The transparency plans, which are transparency plan is an Orwellian term. It uses non-statutory criteria. And the transparency plans, the earliest review period would be the mid-2040s. In other words, the transparency plans that the President Biden approved actually provide for a longer period of time than the original classification. That was the reason that Congress passed the law in the first place.
Larry, when we come back, we're going to get into what you think is missing. I'll tell you what I think is missing. Some of it's kind of obvious. Where is the conversation between CIA Director John McCone and Lyndon Johnson immediately after? There's no transcript of it. There's no tape of it. That's one of the many things I want to talk about on the other side. Thank you for setting the table and explaining to people how we got to where we are today. We'll be right back with more of lawyer Larry Schnepf and what is missing from these JFK assassination documents and their release by the administration. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
Hi, this is Joe from Vanta. In today's digital world, compliance regulations are changing constantly, and earning customer trust has never mattered more. Vanta helps companies get compliant fast and stay secure with the most advanced AI, automation, and continuous monitoring out there. So whether you're a startup going for your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001, or a growing enterprise managing vendor risk, Vanta makes it quick, easy, and scalable. And I'm not just saying that because I work here. Get started at Vanta.com.
This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50, code listen50. T's and C's apply.
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. We're talking to Larry Schnepf, an attorney who has sued the National Archives and the Biden administration and is convinced, as I am, that what we have so far is a woefully incomplete record regarding records that pertain to the Kennedy assassination. One thing that occurs to me, Larry, is where is the Nix film? This is the film by Orville Nix, a witness to the assassination of President Kennedy, who was filming with an 8mm camera on the opposite side of Dealey Plaza from the more famous Abraham Zapruder, who was filming from the opposite angle. It also captured the presidential motorcade, including the moment of the fatal shot to Kennedy's head and the grassy knoll. But Nix, who was an air conditioning engineer, now passed away, used a Keystone auto zoom camera to document the event, starting as the limousine turned onto Houston Street and moving to capture the shooting on Elm Street. Where, for example, is that film, Larry?
Well, it's interesting. His granddaughter, I think it is, filed a lawsuit recently, and in the lawsuit, the government admits that they actually had possession of it at some point, and they don't know what happened to it. It was, I guess it was sent out to get analyzed, and it either never came back or it got lost when it came back. There were two other important films that NBC is holding, the Darnell film and the Wegman film, which are potentially exculpatory for Oswald, because some people think that those films could show Oswald on the steps of the depository building, not on the sixth floor, but NBC has refused to turn them over. One of the things I'm going to be doing is making a recommendation to Representative Luna that she issue subpoenas to the NBC executives for both these two films and for the Walter Sheridan files. They want to get their sale approved for Comcast, and I think that maybe Commissioner Carr could use this as an opportunity and for the public interest to force NBC to release these things. You were on the break, as we broke away, you mentioned something really interesting about this McCone. I was talking to David Kaiser this morning about this very matter. He wrote The Road to Dallas. Most people have been focusing on the Schlesinger memo being released, but the Family Jewels memo, paragraph 10, talks about McCone's, I guess they had a listening device in McCone's office. And where are those recordings? McCone was the director of the CIA at the time of the assassination. So that's an interesting observation you made. I mean, that's, people haven't focused on the Family Jewels in a long time. But there's other memos and information that we need. So there's the outstanding search requests that the ARB made in 1998 to the CIA. The National Archives are supposed to follow up, and they never did. There's the RFK files that we think now are in the National Declassification Center. They were in the library. There's another important set of CIA records called the Heath memos. Donald Heath was a CIA person. He conducted a previously unknown investigation the weekend of the assassination through this spring in Miami of anti-Castro exiles. They submitted daily reports, situation reports, to headquarters. In 1977, he notified the HSCA of the existence of these reports. They were in some room. He last saw them in 73. These have never been seen. We need to get these records. There is Carlos Marcello. There's a tape of Carlos Marcello when he was in jail in the mid-1980s under the Camtext sting operation, where he allegedly said he was behind the assassination. Maybe he funded it. But that tape has been under seal. Now, President Trump did say the other day that he had instructed the Department of Justice to unseal these sealed records. So maybe another 30 days or so before we get to see those. But there's also FBI files on Carlos Marcello that have not been completely released, as well as LDO Davali. So we have a bunch of records that are outside of the collection. President Trump's order said the federal government should disclose all records in its possession. And that's not limited to the collection. And unfortunately, I think because Tulsi Gabbard and Pam Bondi are new, they don't realize that the collection does not represent all of the records in the possession of the federal government. So what we have to do is get them to instruct the agencies to complete these searches for these records. Now, the other thing is there's this Manchester interview, 6 sets of transcripts of interviews, 4 with Jackie and 2 with Robert Kennedy between 64 and 65. They were given to the National Archives as under a deed of gift, which said they can't be released till 2667. We may have to get the law amended to release these records, or ask the Kennedy family, particularly Carolyn, to be able to release these records so we can see. Apparently, Bobby and Jackie did not believe that the president was killed by a lone gunman. And we got to see what they were said in 1964 and 65.
I also recently pointed out the emergence of one of the Watergate tapes in which Richard Nixon is meeting with CIA Director Richard Helms, and he's beginning to pressure Helms for help in the Watergate scandal, which is beginning to engulf him. And he says, there's dirty business going on over there. I know all about it. Needed to be done. And when Helms pretend like he doesn't know what Nixon is talking about, he says, let me put it this way. I know who shot John. I mean, there it is. Until Tucker Carlson aired that I guess on his new show, on his new platform, it was largely unknown and had never come to the attention of the various Watergate scholars. Somehow Woodward and Bernstein missed this. The fact that the four of the Watergate burglars were on the ground in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963. The fact that, as I have written, the paraffin test conducted by the Dallas police indicates that Oswald has no powder burns on his chest or his arms or his hands on the day that he has allegedly fired a $26 World War II vintage Carcano Army carbine. Larry, it seems to me like we have to hope that Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna will listen to your list and the documented list of things that we are missing. I agree with you. We are very far from knowing everything. We've learned some shocking things, the activities of James Jesus Angleton, the CIA's clear knowledge, but everything I've seen so far seems to be oriented towards trying to convince us, once again, that Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone nut, a Russian communist, shot and killed John F. Kennedy with 3 shots, all from behind, acting alone.
Yeah, the one thing that came out this last week was that memo from the KGB guy, where the KGB, they were trying to find out whether the KGB was running Oswald, and the guy said the KGB concluded Oswald was a lousy shot.
Yeah, it does kind of say it so.
This is the Roger Stone Show. This episode is brought to you by Hulu, presenting Paradise. Paradise is Hulu's critically acclaimed addictive drama series, starring Sterling K. Brown, Julianne Nicholson, and James Marsden. The Daily Beast calls Paradise your next TV obsession, and the New York Times says it's exhilarating in all the right ways. Paradise is for your Emmy consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Drama Series. For more information, visit fyc.hulu.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
I am so excited for the spa day. Candles lit. Music on. Hot tub warm and ready. And then my chronic hives come back. Again, in the middle of my spa day. What a wet blanket. Looks like another spell of itchy red skin. If you have chronic spontaneous urticaria, or CSU, there is a different treatment option. Hives during my next spa day? Not if I can help it. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Everybody remembers when New York's Democrat Attorney General Letitia James charged President Donald Trump with inflating the value of his assets in order to borrow money from banks in commercial loans, which he paid back in full and on time, making those institutions almost $40 million in interest. She used a law never used before or since to prosecute Trump in an effort to harm his campaign for president of the United States. Now, however, it seems that Letitia James has a number of troubling questions on her own financial history. Recently, Sam Anta over at whitecollarfraud.com has had a series of bombshell revelations. He points out that Section 73A of the New York Public Officers Law requires that a public official disclose all mortgages and home equity lines of credit. And there's substantial evidence that Letitia James has not done so. There's unreported rental income from 2007 to 2011 on her principal home that she filed only after Cranes exposed it in 2013. There's a first savings bank loan since 2020 that didn't appear on any property records. There's a Citibank loan on that principal property that appeared in her 2022 disclosure, and that was 3 years late, only to vanish in 2023 with no record of satisfaction. The classification of these loans repeatedly changes between mortgages and home equity lines of credit without explanation, and there's a major valuation contradiction. Sam Antar pointed out a 42 value increase was reported in 2022 when New York City's official assessment showed only a 7.58 decrease. Joining me now, however, is a man who has done his own independent research based on his own searches. Joel Gilbert is a film producer based in Los Angeles, and he is the president and head of Highway 61 Entertainment. Among his most famous and best films, of course, are those pertaining to the Middle East, including Farewell Israel and Atomic Jihad, also Banished, the untold story of Danny Williams. And Joel says he is working on a documentary on Attorney General Letitia James. Joel, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Okay, Roger, great to be back. And you're right, Sam Antar really opened the door on all these things on his website, whitecollarfraud.com. And he really inspired me to start looking into the real estate fraud, especially of Letitia James, and increasingly her home at 296 Lafayette Avenue in Brooklyn is starting to look like a crime scene. It's a stunning hypocrisy, and as they say, karma is a bitch, because scrutiny has now turned on to those who abuse the legal system to persecute Republicans in the pursuit of their one-party state. So I have revealed two major articles this week in the Gateway Pundit where I show that Letitia James for 2 decades has been, I think, committing mortgage fraud.
Well, that's a big charge. By the way, we're not doxing her. That address is a matter of public record on public
Correct.
On public documents due to her holding public office. So you're going to need to flesh that out because it is a very serious claim, although I've read both your articles and they seem authoritative. Let's take them one by one. You question whether she is guilty of mortgage fraud. Walk us through that.
Okay, here you go. So Letitia James in 2000 purchases that building, a 4-story apartment building with 5 units, as it states in the certificate of occupancy dated January 26, 2001. And what she does is she refinances repeatedly this home, claiming that it only has 4 units in it and not 5. Now, in the world of mortgage lending, this is a critical distinction because properties with 4 or fewer units qualify as a more favorable residential interest rate, and those with 5 or more are classified as commercial, often subject to higher rates. So I found the most interesting of these refinances took place in 2011 because in 2005 she obtained an adjustable refinancing that went between 7.2 and 10.2%. That was in 2005. So let's fast forward to 2011. Letitia James seeks relief under a federal government HAMP loan, which is under the TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, out of the Department of the Treasury, where they're offering a 2.7% loan. Now, in the HAMP regulations, it clearly says this is only available to homeowners with 4 units or less. Clearly, they wanted to assist small homeowners and small apartment buildings and not large multifamily apartment businesses. Letitia James, though, again applies for this HAMP loan, making 2 claims that seem very suspicious. Number one, she claims she only has 4 units, which is impossible because her certificate of occupancy says there's 5. Secondly, she claims a financial hardship, that even though she was making $126,000 a year as a city council member and a professor at CUNY, she claims she can't afford to pay her mortgage, which doesn't make sense when you're making $10,000 a month, a woman with no children and no family. So there's 2 highly suspicious things that I think the Department of Treasury, which regulates the TARP and HAMP loans, can start to look into. I mean, We know that Letitia James is a warrior, a tireless warrior against real estate fraud. She gave Donald Trump no benefit of the doubt. And she even said when she got a judgment against Trump, she said, you know, everyday Americans cannot lie to the bank to get a mortgage benefit. No matter who you are, you're not above the law. So I think that's a open and shut case. Number one article detailing how she got a government loan to reduce her 10% mortgage to only 2.7% on the backs of the American taxpayer by falsely claiming she had a 4-unit building and by making suspicious claims about her income.
Well, as you know, she ran for office claiming that she was going to lock Trump up. That was before she had conducted any investigation. I think the lawfare against President Trump in New York City has been disgraceful. The other case in which he is charged in the so-called hush money case, where he reaches a perfectly legal settlement against a nuisance case, required some underlying crime. But prosecutor Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney for New York County, could never identify that underlying crime, so he gave like a choose one menu. But not all jurors agreed to any one charge. It's an outrage. It's a catastrophe. It's a hit job. I think most of the American people know it. This was part of the effort to destroy Trump financially, to keep him off the ballot in 50 states, to jam him up, change the law to jam him up in a sexual assault case, which is flawed from the beginning, in which the woman suing him says a number of things that are demonstrably untrue. All of this part of the horrific tsunami of lawfare against him, which he overcame to win one of the greatest comebacks in American political history. When we return, documentary filmmaker Joel Gilbert is going to tell us what else he has learned about the finances of New York Attorney General Letitia James. You're in the right place if you love politics. This is the Roger Stone Show, so whatever you do, stick with us and don't touch that dial. We're going to be doing a deep dive even further on New York Attorney General Letitia James when we return.
This is the Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back with documentary filmmaker Joel Gilbert. Joel is talking about a series of articles he's written for the Gateway Pundit. He has specifically been highlighting the pattern of possible mortgage fraud in regard to New York Attorney General Letitia James. New questions have now arisen about the home that Letitia James purchased with her father, Robert James. Joel, continue.
All right, let me continue. Let me give you a little perspective, though. I don't even think the lawfare against Trump was even that personal. It has to do with what socialism is. Socialism is an economic disaster. No one will ever vote to reelect a socialist government, so that's why they use force. They try to imprison and bankrupt their political opponents. That's what it's been about historically. And they often commit the same crimes themselves that they're chasing down other people for. So it was, looking at the records in New York, it was in the spring of 1983. Letitia's only 24 years old, Letitia James. She lives in Brooklyn with her parents and 8 siblings. She's 2 years out of undergrad at Lehman College, but hasn't started law school yet. And lo and behold, I found a document online that Letitia James purchases a home in 1983, 2-story, 800-square-foot small townhome on Inwood Street in Queens. And when they purchase this property, they take out a mortgage called by Robert James and Letitia James, husband and wife. She misrepresents her father and herself as a husband and wife team to obtain this loan, is certainly what it appears like. And that kind of makes sense because at age 24, with probably no income or no job or low income, she could not have qualified to take out a mortgage on her own to buy a home. So this is a false representation. It's called misrepresentation of a relationship. Lying about marital status to qualify for better loan terms is a crime that can include fines, criminal charges, and even imprisonment. Now, we have a couple other documents in this same saga of this Inwood Street property. On the deed, it actually does say that Robert James and Letitia James are father and daughter. So the ownership for that purpose, for estate purposes, is correct. But in the loan, when the loan is transferred to a new loan company, when there's a sale in the year 2000, they're clearly still listed as Robert James and Letitia James, husband and wife. And it is illegal for a father and daughter to falsely misrepresent themselves to get better loan terms. So the more I look at it, the more the hypocrisy is there. It's breathtaking because Letitia James said no one is above the law. She's a warrior for, mortgage fraud. And I think the 296 Lafayette Avenue looks more and more like a crime scene. And these are two major revelations that Letitia James, I believe, should be investigated for mortgage fraud.
The other place I think that, frankly, she has real problems coming is a closer examination of her campaign financing. There are now 19 state attorney generals investigating Act Blue. Act Blue is the premier fundraising machine of the Democrat Party. It's a payment processing company that suddenly, last 2 weeks ago, virtually imploded. After losing huge sums of money, they essentially fired all of their top-line executives, locking many of them out of their office, fired their general counsel. And the allegation, which is proving true, is that you have multiple small contributions to Democrat candidates, but a large number of small contributions. So $25 given 70 times adds up. These are largely a pattern of these that allow Democrats to raise millions of dollars, but they turn off the function of the credit card. They also allow donations by PayPal and by WhatsApp. They turn off the function in which you have to match your address with the contribution. When you go to the doors of these donors with volunteers and ask the alleged donor whether they have given, whether it is to Val Demings, the Democrat running for the Senate in Florida, or whether it is to Reverend Warnock running in Georgia, or a number of other Democrats, including one of the leading Democrats, Letitia James, you find a pattern of fraud. People who say, no, I never donated. No, that is not my credit card. No, I don't know what you're talking about. In some cases, these are people who gave one contribution years ago, and their data has been shall we say, borrowed for this purpose. Again, I see one of the leading fundraisers, Letitia James. A substantial number of these donors are afraid to talk to you, but a large number of them are, and a disproportionately large number of the donors are specifically denying having given to Ms. James' campaign. I think this is another area of upcoming controversy.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. It's the tip of the iceberg on Democrat Party campaign donations. We're still wondering where in the world Kamala Harris, on 3 months' notice to run for president, got $2 billion from. Letitia James has a series of loans over 20 years on her home that don't make a whole lot of sense. But the good news is, which Sam Antar has kind of paved the way for with his website, that everything is online in New York. All the donors, all the loans, and we have very serious analysis going on right now, and I expect to have an article about Letitia James' manipulation of the campaign funds that are going to be very revelatory coming up very soon.
Also, there's the question of whether she did or did not use campaign funds for personal use. There's some evidence that that is the case. She, by the way, is invited to come on this show and respond anytime she would like. Somehow I don't think she'll take me up on that, but it is an open invitation. Everything we have reported here, I've gone through and has been thoroughly documented. It is part and parcel of the hypocrisy of the left. These are Alinsky's rules for radicals. Always accuse your opponent of exactly that which you yourself are doing. And I think this is a classic example of that. I want to thank our guest, Joel Gilbert, a documentary filmmaker, the head of president of Highway 61. By the way, one of the great fans and acolytes of the great Bob Dylan. He's actually played with the Dylan tribute band for a number of years. Something else I love about you, Joel. Coming up next, Matt Gaetz, the former congressman, talks to us about judges gone wild and whether we can get relief from this judicial tyranny that seeks to stop Donald Trump's America First agenda.
This is The Roger Stone Show. This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
You're back on The Roger Stone Show, and joining me now is Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is a former U.S. congressman who represented Florida's 1st congressional district from 2017 to 2025. Matt's known for his outspoken style and his strong conservative values. Few Trump supporters have been more viciously or baselessly smeared than Matt Gaetz, but he just kept fighting. And now he is building a new identity as the host of the very, very good Matt Gaetz Show on One America's News, where he is emerging as one of the most influential conservative voices in the country today. Matt Gaetz, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thanks so much for having me, Roger.
I've enjoyed being on your new show. It is the hottest show in town, and congratulations on that. We were talking earlier on the show about this left-wing domestic terrorism against Tesla, the so-called Tesla takedown, and the attacks that are happening across the country. What sort of investigation do you think should take place? What should America do about this? What should the administration do about it?
What I'm personally having to do is just endure the whiplash. Because wasn't it just like 20 minutes ago, most of the leftists in this country wanted to force us to all buy an electric vehicle? And now they're burning down electric charging stations? Like, did any of the eco-terrorists or domestic terrorists doing this spend a moment thinking about the carbon footprint of this terrorism against Tesla charging stations and Tesla plants? Think about all the carbon that's being emitted, the destruction of air quality. Those might have to be federal Superfund sites for like the next 100 years. So I am in a bit of shock over the whole thing. It also says something else about where the movement on the left is right now, and they are leaderless. They don't have the closest thing they have to someone standing up saying, I am in charge, follow me, this is what we believe, are Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They're the ones drawing the crowds, having the rallies. But Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, this band of loser governors they have, Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Meg Whitmer, these people are not sufficiently channeling whatever energy exists on the political left now to better ideas, to seizing innovation. I mean, like, the Republicans didn't inherit the tech bros. They were driven out of the Democratic Party. We didn't, get the whole crypto community. It's because Kamala Harris and Gensler and the whole crew was hyper hostile to that community. And so we are actually now the welcoming community, and they're the people burning down the charging stations for the car that they wanted to force you to buy 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, and you make an excellent point. They, as a party, they have no platform. They have no positive proposals. They have no way to create jobs or deal with the affordable housing issue in America. They seem committed to endless war, where our national interests are just not clear. They don't even want to negotiate Under Biden, we had no talks going whatsoever. Donald Trump runs as a peace candidate, and now he has a difficult job of getting both sides to the table because it takes two to tango. First, they say that he's in Putin's pocket. Then when he threatens Putin with bank sanctions and sanctions as well as tariffs, and he ultimately gets Zelensky to the table, they criticize him again. But they have no plan for peace. They have no plan whatsoever. When your final election message is Trump is Hitler, and if you vote for him, you're a Nazi, that's not very uplifting. It's not very inspiring, is it?
No, it is not, and it made me laugh when I saw AOC and Bernie standing behind their, no oligarchy sign, because they're perfectly comfortable funding the oligarchies in Ukraine. They have no problem voting for U.S. tax dollars to go fund foreign oligarchies. It's just when it's the U.S. oligarchy, apparently that's when their feathers get ruffled. But they have converted to the pro-war party. We are the peace party. They are the war party. That's a complete inversion of our politics from the mid-'90s and early 2000s. And I think it's a consequence of Donald Trump just shaping this party in his image. And, look, there's a lot of places on the planet Earth where there's still a lot of bad folks, and Trump is not some beatnik, right? He wants to have a strong, capable, effective military, but what we're not going to do is, get our nation's credibility drug endlessly through these regional territorial disputes that aren't core to who we are and the success of our people.
I think it is also true that they become the party of censorship. We're the party of free speech. They used to be the party of free expression. They used to hate the FBI. Now they love the FBI. Our politics are indeed completely and totally inverted. Perhaps this is why Democrats are seeing the lowest approval ratings they've had in years. Bernie Sanders used to criticize billionaires and millionaires. Watch carefully. Now he only criticizes billionaires. You know why? Because, as a result of his two campaigns for president and skimming media commissions off of both, he and his wife had become millionaires. By the way, that's not illegal, but you wonder whether he disclosed that to his donors, that when they were giving to his campaign, that he was taking 15% placement on the television and cable and radio ads.
Right, and the thing if you ever admired Bernie Sanders, what you admired him for was an authenticity, a sense that he wasn't bought, that he wasn't doing this on some sort of grift, that he actually believed in socialism as a governing political philosophy. And it turns out Bernie and his wife did not want to equally distribute the 15% or close thereto commission they were skimming off the top of ad buys and share that with all their donors. Wouldn't that have been something, Roger, if instead of keeping that money, they would have redistributed it in line with their politics? But indeed, it turns out in the chest cavity of some of the most effective political socialists in America beats the heart of a true capitalist, because that made them considerably wealthier. Now, the problem that Democrats have is in the absence of a policy that they're fighting for, right? You can love Obama, you can hate Obama. I thought he was a terrible president, and I actually still think we're enduring a lot of the pain from the Obama presidency. At least Obama was running on policy proposals that he intended to do if elected, and in the case of healthcare, he in fact did do, right? Whereas now, it's like you said, the organizing philosophy of the political left is that the right are Nazis. And that's the reason you don't really want to play that card as much as they did is that if it doesn't work, where do you go from there, right? What are you going to have to start saying about members of Congress who are Democrats who are doing bills with Republicans? And there still are a few who do that. What are you going to say about governors who have to work with Republican legislators who are on the other side of the aisle? And so it has created such a niche movement. And indeed, within that niche movement, there is energy and passion and enthusiasm and all the they, them you can get your hands on. But I don't know that it's something that's going to result in winning elections. That's something we talk a lot about on my program is the path to majorities in the Congress. And what you and I both know is that the path to the majority in the House indeed does run through red or purple districts in blue states. You got to win Orange County, California. You got to win Central and Upstate New York. And in a lot of those places, the map is getting better for us because where you've got a Governor Kathy Hochul, where you've got a Governor Gavin Newsom allowing the state to be lit on fire, you're able to make a really compelling case about our brand, and it's a tailwind that the Democrat brand is in the shape it's in. 27% of Americans have a favorable view of Democrats. That is historically low, but it is not a function of El Nino or climate change. It's a function of the choices they've made, the rhetoric they've used, and the lack of policy leadership that they now can gravitate to.
We also, however, I think have to be very demanding when it comes to honest elections. I mean, these recent elections in Orange County, California, which you mentioned, it is undeniable that more people voted than are registered to vote in at least 2 of those congressional districts. And to me, that is troubling. I also look at the 14th District of Florida, where a abnormally high number of people who sent in mail-in ballots, those ballot applications have no social securities or birth dates on them. I think the voters must insist on honest elections if we are to rebuild our House majority. Matt, with about a minute to go, and then we can come back. Any doubt whatsoever that Jimmy Petronas, who I love, is going to win your seat on April 1st in the special election?
No, I have no doubt that Jimmy Petronas will win. He will be my successor as the congressman for the 1st District, and I'm counting on him to do a great job, and I think he will. Jimmy is a public servant at heart. He really cares about people. I think he'll be the kind of congressman who does tremendous work on constituent service, who's a great fighter in the halls of Congress, and we'll be there to cheer him on along the way and make sure he's successful.
Yeah, I think he's a very, very good man. He's a principled conservative. He is a real supporter and advocate for the taxpayers, and I share your view. So we'll be right back with the great Matt Gaetz. He has a great new show at America, One America News. You're going to check that as well. Don't go away, folks. We're right back with Matt Gaetz.
This is the Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back with Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is the host of the Matt Gaetz Show on One America News, where he is emerging as one of the most influential conservative and pro-Trump voices in the country with his keen political insights and his bold commentary. And we are very happy to have him. Matt, I want to ask you a tough question about the continuing resolution that allowed our government to continue to function. As conservative Republicans, we don't love these. We consider it putting a Band-Aid on a serious problem. We had your former colleague and friend, Eric Burleson, on a couple weeks ago, who explained, I think, very succinctly why he reluctantly decided to vote yes. Also note that Tim Burchett, another member that I greatly respect and like, also decided in the end to vote yes. Had you been in the House, what would you have done with this thorny problem?
I would have labored over it because I agree with every argument made by Thomas Massie when he voted no. I likely would have been, though, with my colleagues who supported it to get it over to the Senate to serve the volley. And the Senate almost blinked. They almost gave in to their base. And Roger, had Chuck Schumer not changed sides at the last minute on the continuing resolution, if he had done what he was signaling he was going to do and moved us into a shutdown, that would have converted Doge from Bruce Banner to the Incredible Hulk. That would have given Elon Musk and crew enormous power to dismantle programs, do away with funding streams, and try to reset the balance of federal spending in a way that's fair to Americans who shouldn't be shouldered with all this debt.
The way the Democrat left has turned on Chuck Schumer has been a sight to see. He is actually vulnerable, in my opinion, in a New York State Democrat U.S. Senate primary to AOC. Firstly, she has the ability to raise millions and millions of dollars at the grassroots. Secondarily, I point out that she beat one of your former colleagues, Joe Crowley, who was actually the chairman of the Queen's Democrat machine, as well as being a member of Congress. That tells you where the Democrat Party is at the grassroots in New York State now. It is the party of bail reform. It is the party of high taxes. It is the party that is soft on crimes. It is the party that has made New York the economic basket case that it is today. And Chuck Schumer, they've now suddenly decided is too moderate for them. I think he could be in serious trouble. I have no doubt about his fundraising capabilities, but the Democrat Party has changed very dramatically since Chuck Schumer came out of the New York State Assembly.
Well, let me put it to you perhaps even more directly than that. If you're an old straight white guy in the Democratic Party, they're coming for you. They did it to Elliot Engel. They did it to Joe Crowley. They have a particular way of doing it in New York, and they will DEI you out of the party one way or the other. Maybe it's that you're too moderate. Maybe it's that you took a vote they didn't like. Maybe it's just that they have another aspiring star that they would rather give the opportunity to. And I am going to disagree with you on AOC running. I do think she would win. I don't think she will be running for the Senate in 2026 because I believe that AOC, with Bernie Sanders by her side, is going to be running for president of the United States in 2028. And I don't think she wants to jump directly from a Senate campaign to the Democratic primary. But expect to see her in that presidential field and to use her position in the House to continue to put pressure on people who represent the Chuck Schumer wing of the Democratic Party, whatever that even is anymore.
I agree with that. There were those in 2014 who urged Donald Trump to run for governor of New York, and he had his eye on a much, much bigger prize. I think that is a very similar situation where she doesn't have to risk a U.S. senator. So I agree with your analysis. All I'm saying is that in a theoretical race, I think he would be vulnerable. I think you're right. I think she goes right to the big leagues, and frankly, she would be she'd be a credible, from their point of view, I should say, viable candidate for their nomination. Although the polls overwhelmingly
Well, who would you take to beat her? Who would you like if you've got the field and I've got AOC? Oh, what are you feeling good about Gavin Newsom? Way too straight, way too male, way too white. Are you betting on Whitmer? I don't know. I think that's going to be. She'll probably be like the Amy Klobuchar of the field. Sort of not all that interesting lady from the Midwest. But who do you have winning the Democratic primary in 2028 if not AOC?
Well, the current frontrunner, of course, would be Kamala Harris, and the polls show it. She may make an intermediate stop at the governorship of California, although I would argue that she doesn't need to do so if she actually aspires to run again, which she might. I'll tell you who I don't think will get off the ground is J.D. Pritzker. That guy's so fat he's got his own zip code. I mean, I don't know what he's thinking about, but he's emulating in Illinois the no bail policies that so terribly hurt New York State. He's now emulating them in Illinois, which is why Chicago is out of control when it comes to skyrocketing violent crime. But he's going to
be the Chris Christie of the field. He's definitely the Chris Christie of the field, somebody who never really makes it above single digits in their percentages. Look, this is becoming a very angry, very radical, very exclusionary group of people, and I think that bodes very well for Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez's prospect to lead the party. They're not going to go back to Harris. They're not going back to steal a line from a particular campaign. They're not going back. They are indeed burdened by what's been. She may run for governor of California. If she does that, she'll probably win. But I'm telling you, Roger, when we were out on that campaign, we heard so many stories, saw so many things that showed even in a condensed contest, that really she was not emotionally up for it. And there are I don't. That's not a gendered comment. There are a lot of men who aren't emotionally up for it. Maybe Ron DeSantis was one of them, actually. But she certainly was drinking heavily on the campaign. She was constantly berating staffers. I think she would far prefer the friendly confines of the Golden State to live out her political twilight.
So with about a minute and a half left, we have an activist judge in D.C. who tells the President of the United States that he cannot deport dangerous criminals and terrorists. What should the President do about this?
Ignore those orders. The judges don't get to conduct foreign policy, and when they start trying to, we should not indulge their dalliances. The Constitution is clear on this question. The President has plenary power to conduct foreign policy of the United States. There's an invasion going on. And look, we cannot live in a world where every single federal judge can issue a nationwide injunction and constrain the progress of this movement. I don't think it's the first order that's going to be ignored.
All right. Bold words from our guest. Bold words from our guest, Matt Gaetz. Matt, thank you so much for joining us this day on the Roger Stone Show. We very much appreciate it. Make sure you check out Matt Gaetz' new show, The Matt Gaetz Show, on One America News. It is hot as a pistol. It's a great show. I've enjoyed being on. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.